to the Autoimmune Vitality Online Conference Series. I'm your host, Dr. Eva, and my guest for this session is Martin Pascal. Martin is an inner self-alignment specialist and the founder of the Inner Self-Alignment Master Plan. For the last 25 years, she has been studying quantum physics, sacred geometry, and human frequencies. And in this session, Martin will talk to you about the human blueprint, which reveals the vibrational frequency we were born with. And Martin has discovered that this vibration is often out of tune in the majority of us. And our energy is a magnet, hence it's called an electromagnetic field. So if we are out of alignment with our inner self, we can easily attract unwelcome situations in our lives, such as illness or relationship problems, etc. And Martin can help you reveal what your frequency is and how out of tune you may be, and then gives you the tools to reset yourself by tuning in to your own inner self and your strengths, and therefore empowering you to make life-changing choices. So Martin, welcome to Autoimmune Vitality Conference Series. It's great to talk to you. I know you have a lot of fascinating information to share, so I'm very excited for this conversation.
Hello.
Hi. So I will just say that I have decided to include this session in the Autoimmune Vitality series because even though many people appreciate the fact that we are all energy, I don't think I think generally not enough people consider that when we make choices that affect our health, obviously energy is a big part of it. And again, if our frequencies are out of balance, as I said in the introduction, then our health will be affected, our immune system will be affected, our organ function will be affected, etc. Because there is this direct connection. So that's really why I wanted to talk to you in this conference series. And so I'm going to start with asking you how you got into this field of study and this work that you're doing.
Yeah, yes, no problem. Basically, a long time ago when I was at university, I was a mature student, and one of my friends there, or colleagues there, she had some books that, from our conversations throughout the couple of years that we were there, she decided to pass these books on to me. And I thought, what's she giving me these for? I didn't really understand at first. So one day, about sort of 12 months later, my daughter had left to go to scholarship for a college at university at London, and my son had actually gone to university. So I just thought, right, okay, I'm going to spread out as you do, got my own house back to myself, and I kind of was moving around, and this particular book fell on me. And I thought, oh, and it wasn't very big, so I just started to read it, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit, really, because it described me quite accurately. Unlike astrology or numerology, it really described me quite accurately just based on my date of birth. So I was fascinated with it and started to, work with it then for a good few years. And then one day, my son, he was actually speaking with some friends of his who were very spiritual, and they said to him, do you know the significance of the number 9? So he came home and said, do you know the significance of the number 9? So I said, well, I do, but you read it and interpret it yourself. And so he was reading the book, and he did the same thing. He said, wow, this has really got me to a T, more than anything. So I said, I know. Anyway, he decided then that he asked me if he could we could make an app out of this information originally. And I just thought, well, there's copyright, we need to speak to the people. So I then decided to trace the author down of the book, which was very, very difficult. It took me about 18 months to do so, and had a reading with him. And the reading was nothing like the book. The reading went from 0 to sort of 3 in 0.2 seconds, really. That was just blew my mind completely out of the water. And I just said, I need to know how to do this. He said, no, he's nearly 80 years old. He doesn't do it anymore. He's only taught a few people, and he's never going to do it. So I was persuading him because that's my nature and that was in my blueprint, so he told me. And he then decided to fly over from South Africa, which is where he lived, to Ireland. I'm living in England, and met me and did a one-to-one course with me, an intense one-to-one course. And then for the next 12 months, he trained me over online on the internet. So I'm probably one of the only ones that's had the intensive training, as he constantly reminds me. And he said it's because of my date of birth that he finally decided to teach me all the bits that he knew. But from then, I've kind of taken it on another level as well now. So yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like it was meant to be. So actually, before we dive in a little bit into the detail of what a human blueprint is and what people can learn from that, could you start with making the link between human frequencies and health? Because people listening to this, people with autoimmune conditions, will be thinking, well, okay, but how does this apply to me? So could you make that connection, just in case not everybody understands it fully?
Yeah, sure. As we all know, we are all energy. I mean, the science now is allowed to come through and sort of validate that. And so within energy, we have vibrational frequencies. So if we're all energy, we have got a vibrational frequency within us that we're not actually have been aware of, really. We kind of exist and not understand why we do things. And so the frequency that we have, if it's out of kilter, especially when it becomes to an illness, you then start to resonate at a lower vibration. And so if you resonate at a lower vibration, you can have an open door to everything that is within that lower vibrational field. You tend to come out of harmony with yourself. And if you're out of harmony with yourself, you become what we call a dis-ease happens within our body or in our system. And for me, the way I look at that is, if you can imagine you go to a theatre or you listen to a particular type of music, and the music, you just get so carried away with it because you totally fall in love with that music because it's all in harmony. But if you go to another concert and they're all sort of playing out of tune and out of key, you want to get up and walk away. And so it's the same with us. We need to be in harmony with ourselves and our vibration to allow our body to fully function in an ease and an harmony and a balance, basically. So that's how the sort of frequencies work within ourselves. If you're out of frequency or a low vibrational frequency, you're going to have some kind of illness going on within your system, really, and it becomes distorted and not what the universe wants to hear or you want to hear. Your body just doesn't want to hear it, so it goes under attack to try and bat it away. And if it's using all that energy to do that, you get depleted. So that's when you kind of get the chronic diseases, because it's constantly fighting, trying to be in harmony, but emotions and kind of just thought processes, they're always knocking that vibration and that frequency out of kilter.
Great. So yeah, thank you for explaining that. And then of course, as we go through life, there's just so many things that affect, well, everything around us is also energy. So everything around us will affect us, what we put in our bodies, our environment, you know, all the electromagnetic radiation that we're surrounded with, etc., etc. So, you know, all of those factors will be playing a role in our overall vibration and how we, or the resonance, if you like. So okay, so before we actually talk a little bit more about what you do, how you work with people, and the human blueprint, could you explain in a little bit more detail sacred geometry? Because that's another thing that I don't think many people are really familiar with. They may have heard the term, but they don't necessarily know what it's about and how that relates to everything. So are you okay to explain that?
Yes, I can explain it the best I can, because sacred geometry is just absolutely, it's a very vast subject, and it has so many different meanings and different interpretations, and depending on what you're using it for as well. But basically it's an invisible sort of matrix, really. It's kind of, we don't actually see it, but it's all around us. It's around us in nature, you know, it's around us in our bodies. If you look at our alignments, sort of, especially in the fingers, there's a sequence that Fibonacci used, and basically it's 1.618, and that, if you look at your fingers, you have this sort of measurements in there, and from your arm, basically, you know, from your elbow to your arm, there's like a dinked somewhere there, if you cut into where your wrist is, and if you put your finger in that, you will find that the measurement from there and then up to your fingertips has that 1.618. Aesthetically pleasing if you are. Sometimes people can be slightly out, but that's what they call the perfection. So sacred geometry really is about numbers and how they are and harmonize with everything around us, whether it be in nature or whether it be us as humans. So what I kind of looked at is how that works. It's a symphony, it's patterns get formed, and not really looking at it, there's only so many numbers really that are actually used, and there's only 9 numbers. So it's 1 to 9 are the most important vibrational frequencies that we have at our disposal. And if you look at that, especially the number 9, which I mentioned earlier, that number 9 you will see everywhere. 360 degrees, 3 and 6 is 9. It will crunch down to the number 9. 45 degrees, 4 and 5 is 9. You know, you will see it throughout most things of importance. Angles, the pyramids. It's kind of ancient mysteries, and a lot of the ancient mysteries have either been lost or so hard to actually retrieve and cipher what the actual meanings are. So we're kind of left to finding what's around us and actually just looking at it and observing it and thinking, oh my gosh, yes, this is what it is, because we can see it. If we look hard enough, we can actually see it, and you will see that in nature. Look at a flower, the sunflower, how it has the spiral, and everything is aesthetically pleasing with that and measured in a specific measurement and has a pattern. So that's how I interpret sacred geometry and how I use it. I will let you know later on how I use it within the human blueprint.
So, right, so we may as well go into that now, and you could explain in detail what the human blueprint is and how you work with people, what's involved exactly, and what information they can get out of it, and how that can help enhance their life and their health. So I know you have a few slides, so if you want to screenshot that with me and talk us through exactly how it works and what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So there we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So basically the human blueprint, I'm using it for inner self alignment, and I have a master plan with that, which I'll go into later. But basically the human blueprint looks at our date of birth, and within that date of birth we have these numbers that I was mentioning that are in sacred geometry. We are born with 8 of the 9 numbers. We do have an influence, but the actual energy that we have within ourselves is really, we have 8 of those energies that we have access to, and they're found within our date of birth. So by crunching the numbers down, for instance, if you were born on the 23rd of a month, you wouldn't look at the 23, you would look at it as a 5, because you'd always bring it down to its singular number. So 2 and 3 would be 5. So that would keep it within that 1 to 9 category. But 8 of those you would actually have within your own date of birth. So what I do then is I look at that date of birth and I see how you are resonating and what are you using. So it's based from astrology, numerology, a lot of my own discoveries from my intuition, observations and wisdom, because throughout the years, about 6 years now that I've been doing it on a daily basis, I've actually done readings for literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and when I've sort of observed them, I've literally saw the patterns that they were using individually, because you could get somebody with the exact same date of birth, you know, day, month and year, but they were using that blueprint different. And the reason why they were using it differently is because they were tuning into it differently based on their upbringing, their surroundings, their environment, all the things that we mentioned earlier. So it was kind of puzzling to me at first, thinking, well, how are they using it that way? If they've got this as a blueprint, why are they tuning out of what they've been given? And what I noticed was that there was a lack of unawareness. They weren't aware of what they were actually born with. So basically then I kind of delved into it a little bit deeper to have a look at, you know, what the significance is and why it was with this sacred geometry. And I found that from creation, we have what we call the egg of life. And when it gets to the 8 egg phase, when we're sort of being created in the womb, that is the point that everything is formed from our eyes to our fingers. So everything is formed in that 8 egg phase. And so when I was looking at that, I thought another little alarm bell and a little light switch came on, and I thought, oh my gosh, this 8 is having such a powerful resonance with me, because if everything is created in life, or you have all your tools, let's say, in that bracket of 8, I can see the exact same thing in the human blueprint. So you have got the 8 little sort of cells, let's say, which cells are the energy. So you have those, and this is where everything is formed. So if we're looking at it in that respect, I could then start to say, right, okay, so let's see what you have, let's see what your limitations are, let's see how you can tune into that information basically that you've been given. So then I looked at that and thought, right, okay, so now we've got to look at how I'm going to separate this to make it understandable for people to kind of adhere to and to get to the point of what's going on. So I looked at it, and we know our thoughts are energy. And so if in the actual human blueprint, 6 of the blueprints we actually use for creation. So basically, if you've been given sort of only 4 out of the 8, you're going to have a little bit more of a limitation of having the whole 8. And when I say 4 of the 8, what I mean by that is, if we've been given 8 energies, let's say, and out of those 8 energies, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those numbers. But supposing you have 3 6s, 3 2s, and only 2 1s. So you're missing the 4s, the 5s, the 7s, and 8s. So you're missing those other numbers. So this is where you get people then who tend to come under attack and are more prone to having an illness, because their energy is missing certain vibrational frequencies. So what I look at then is when somebody's having some kind of illness which becomes chronic, normally it's because of these missing energies. But that doesn't mean to say that because you've got a missing energy that is it. Because what we then do is look at how you are using it. So if you're using it as reactions, you're going to become more sort of ill for longer and longer and longer. So that's when I start to look at the actions and the reactions, the other 2 vibrational frequencies within your blueprint, and look at how you are making those choices and what tools you have out of that limited vibration, what tools you have to then switch you up to put you back into that healthy mind, really. So it's kind of looking at it in that way. So we have our outer world, we have our inner world, and I have what I call the lesson in life. So in our outer world, we look at how we're perceiving things. And again, as we know, from 0 to 7 years old, we're already programmed and wired, basically based on our surroundings, our parents, our peers, everything that we're absorbing, because at 0 to 7 we absorb 40 million bits of information per second, which is a lot of information. We're on recording throughout those years. So if you have a blueprint that is mum's or dad's or anybody doesn't know about, then the belief systems are going to go into your data. So if you're then trying to please mum or dad or whoever, you're going against your actual blueprint. Now, this kind of happened to me at one point, because when my son was born and my daughter, I didn't know anything about human blueprints, so I brought them up how you would. You just bring them up with how you think you should bring them up based on your parents and so forth. And so my son's blueprint was he had this hidden desire to be on stage, basically, and to perform. And when I was training on this is what the guy said to me who trained me. He said about my son, and I said, well, no, not at all. My son at the time was 30. I said, I would never agree with that. My daughter, yes, because she was a performer, she's been on stage, but not my son. So I was quite disappointed for that small moment, because I'm thinking, gosh, I've trained on this and this isn't right, and I wanted the authenticity of it being right. So when I came home and I mentioned to my son about this hidden desire that I was told he had, he said, yes, I have. And I was so shocked, because I thought I knew what my son wanted to do and what he wanted to be. Footballer, you know, karate, all the things that I put him out there to do, you know, all the boys things that you tend to think that boys want to do. I kind of took him on all those journeys, but he never stuck at anything. Whereas my daughter, she excelled in the entertainment world. So I just thought, wow, this is bizarre. And I didn't know that that was lurking around in my son. I never knew. So that was his outer world, had been created by me thinking he wanted to do football, by me thinking he wanted to do basketball, you know, karate, BMX biking, all the things. And he never did. So I suppressed that side to him, you know, not purposefully, but unconsciously. And so this is what happens then. So when we're perceiving things, what he'd done is he'd looked at his sister dancing on stage, and he perceived his natural self-desire to want to be a performer. He connected it with being a dancer, and it's not what he wanted to be. So he locked that away. So I never saw that or was able to bring that out in him. So the feedback that he was receiving was, that's not for me. And until I mentioned it on that particular day, which unlocked him, he is now excelling on this public speaking road, which is what he wanted to do, because he's understood, that's not what I wanted to do with the dancing, but it was publicly speaking, and that's what he wanted to do. So we look at things like that, and we look at comfort zones, love, greed, and profit, which is all in our outer world, based on what we perceive from an early age. But the inner world is where we really should be looking at, and the inner world is how we process information, how our information returns back to us. And we really need to be looking at love, our strength and balance within our inner self. And when I look at the blueprint, how I look at your inner self, and I'll compare it with your outer world and see some people are very much living with the outer tools and never really tuning into their inner vibration, which again keeps them out of kilter and takes them out of tune. The reason being, I've discovered, is lesson in life, because we project things and we kind of have a sense of spirit the way we do things. And again, this gets reflected back to us. And we're looking at really the truth, the honesty and understanding, because what we tend to do is, once we're wired and we have this data that we've been given, we don't want to let go of it. We want to keep it. We want to, because we're familiar with it. But what we're doing is we're not really expressing ourselves, and then wonder why things are coming back to us that we, in our truest self, don't really want. And it's because we haven't learned the lesson in life. And we're also having a sense of spirit the way we're doing things by creating this falseness, really, based on other people's beliefs and our energy being completely out of its vibration. So the point to all what I do is to really align that. So it's aligning your outer world with your inner world. So, because once your inner world is completely aligned, that is when your outer world will reflect the same. And that's when you find harmony, not only in health, but the people that surround you, you know, the things that you desire will start to come into your life. Just share surprise, you know, with surprise, and share, oh my gosh, really? Because you become aligned, and that then gives you your purpose, your potential, and your power. And that you get all that back because you already have it. I just align you to that to make sure that it's working to its fullest potential.
So this is really, really interesting. And I just sort of, from just a slightly different angle, I do talk a lot about conflict, internal conflict. And I do different types of personality profiling. And like you, I just have to say that a lot of people's problems come from the fact that they have this outer self that is quite simply not the same as the inner self, because it's the front, it's the conditioned self. and the front they put on to deal with the world and what they think that other people want to see. And then there's the inner self, and if that happens to be misaligned, what you get is internal conflict, and you can sometimes feels like you just at war with yourself, basically. And that I wanted to obviously emphasize that once more, that if you have this internal battles in your head all the time, that is a source of chronic stress. And of course, we all know how that links to poor health outcomes. Yeah, that's very interesting. And what I wanted to also emphasize, I think we should emphasize that you get all this information from just one question, right? Just emphasize that a little bit more, because that's the weird, spooky bit.
Yes, it is. It really is just the one question, because what happens is sometimes when you're doing people profiling, there's lots and lots of questions. You're answering the question based on the subconscious, which is based on beliefs, which are not necessarily your beliefs. So the magic of this system was that it was only one question, because you don't have to think about your date of birth. Everybody knows when the date of birth is. So when I ask that question, I don't want to know anything else about anybody, because once I've just asked that question, I can just see the pattern. I read the patterns, I read the tools that you've been given, and then we can look at how you're using them. But it is just that one question, which is the surprise part of it, because for me to be able to speak and to explain and to tell somebody about themselves by asking nothing else but that question, what is your date of birth? And to be accurate with it as well, it puts people in a place of, well, it's impossible for you to know that. So you have to accept it. That even skeptics, I have plenty of people who come to me that, oh, go on then, here's my date of birth. They're thinking that I'm going to fall, down with it. But it is what it is, and they go, oh, and they don't want to admit it because they're skeptic, but they have to, because, and I've had some people say, well, give credit where it's due. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I don't know how you got that information, but yes, you're quite spot on, and so it is incredible that it is just that one question that I'm asking, because I just see it. I can see it within the vibrational frequency of the numbers, how they are aligned, where they are positioned, and how you're using them. And the lesson in life is quite important as well, because if that's running through your blueprint several times, the lesson in life becomes harder for you to learn it, really. So therefore you're actually in a position where you are subjected to things showing you that lesson in life constantly, to say, have you learned this lesson? Have you learned this lesson? Have you learned this lesson? And so it's not taking it personally, it's saying you need to learn this lesson. And I will bring every man and his army into your life until you have learned that lesson. And so this is where I look at, this is the whole picture, is that vibration of everything that's going on, just with that one question.
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk about my experience with this. I'm not a skeptic necessarily when it comes to things like this, because bioenergetics to me is definitely the future, whether it's to do with our health or otherwise. But when we first connected, and you said you do this for me so that I get a better idea before we do this interview, I wasn't skeptical, but I was wondering, well, how much information can you really get just out of that? And it's an awful lot of information, I can tell you that. And it was absolutely bang on the money. And we only just connected, and I wanted to say that we only just connected. You didn't really know much about me at all, apart from what I do, and but there were loads of things in the blueprint that you couldn't have possibly known that, and they were incredibly accurate. And an interesting thing was that actually my lesson in life was not to get too sort of distracted trying to do 20 million things and 20 million projects all at the same time. And I already had started learning that lesson before actually I connected with you. But funnily enough, that came out, this is something that I needed to learn And I think I'm doing a better job of it now, being more focused rather than getting too overly excited, just doing too many things at the same time and possibly making myself ill over that. So, so that, yeah, I just wanted to say that, yes, I can vouch for that. It's an awful lot of information, and it gives you that direction that either it will, in my case, it reassured me that the direction I was going in was the right thing for me, and it feels right for me, and that just kind of aligned with the numbers and what you said. So that's, I just find that incredibly fascinating. But, you know, I was okay in terms of my alignment. There wasn't anything major in there. But this is probably a good time to talk about, well, okay, so somebody gives you the date of birth and you're going through the blueprint and you're picking up on all those things that perhaps are not ideal, and perhaps they're not responding to things in an ideal way for them, or they're not making the most out of life, let's just say. What can you do? How can you direct them? That's the bit when you do the reset, right?
Yes, exactly. So the reset is, because if you can imagine, we have data, we are kind of a bit like a computer, really. And what we need to do, if you've got a computer and you start putting everything on it, it can get viruses and all sorts if it's not protected. And it goes so far away from its defaulted software. And this is what happens to us. We get so far away from our default software that we start ending up picking up viruses. We end up kind of working off alignment, and we do all these things that kind of take us so far away. So what the human blueprint does, it actually, once we've actually found what your particular blueprint is and how you're using it, we then automatically reset you, because you now have the awareness of the tools. And we're not talking about, even though it's a lot of information, we're talking of 8 numbers here. So it's not hard, especially when you will resonate with the numbers because they're yours. So I'm really only giving you the tools that you already own. It's just that I'm making you aware of the tools that you already own. So you will find it a lot easier to use them. So the reset, it just does a switch. You kind of think, oh gosh, yes. Well, yes, and it just becomes so easy then once you understand it and once you start to work with it. And out of everybody that I've done the reading for, or the readings for, people message me all the time and it stays with them. Even those who have 2nd and 3rd and 4th readings are not coming back for the blueprint necessarily to remember what those tools are, because you get a recording anyway. I always ask people to record it, so you've always got your blueprint. But what happens is, when they come back for a 2nd and 3rd reading, they're looking at the different situations and how they can apply it, because that takes its time. The reset, you've got your tools, you know what you've been given. We bring you back to who you naturally were, but then you've got some work to do, like everything. We don't kind of just walk away, I'm reset now and this is me, this is my life. You've also got to put it into practice. And like everything, when we're practicing, like a bike, when we're riding, we fall off a few times, we need to get back on it, riding a horse, whatever it is you're going to practice doing, you have to keep doing it. And so sometimes I get people coming back saying, oh, can you just help me with this, and we'll do another reading based on the situation that they're in at that moment in time. So the reset is looking at you, giving you your tools, resetting you to your vibrational tuning that you were given, and then the awareness of that will automatically, you'll find when you're going out to do something, you'll play that energy, because we are sort of playing energies really. So we're playing the harmony of it. But because you've been made aware of it, you can, oh my gosh, you'll start observing other people differently, and they'll start to observe you differently, because you're now working with your default data, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I wanted to ask also, is there any times that this wouldn't work?
Good question. The only time it wouldn't work, and it happened to me, my sister, when I was training, we had to give dates of birth, and I gave everybody's dates of birth, and I gave my sister, and he read my sister. I said, no, that's not my sister. So, and I said, oh, actually, try, and it was the 14th of August, which is what we know her to be born on the 14th of August. But I remembered, actually, as we were doing the reading, that when I was younger, I overheard my mum saying to one of my aunties, oh, well, you know, my sister, she was born on the 13th, but I'm so superstitious, I chose the 14th. So I just said, put the 13th in, and lo and behold, as soon as he put the 13th in, it was my sister. So when I got home, I said to my mum, I said, you know how we celebrate my sister's birthday on the 14th? She was born on the 13th, wasn't she? And she went, no. I said, she was. And she went, well, it was midnight. She wouldn't admit it, but she has a superstition on 13. So I know now by putting that date of birth in, it was the 13th. So it can only be inaccurate if the date of birth isn't right.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, so you work online. So if anybody wanted to explore this, they'll be able to just connect with you online, regardless of where they are, right?
Yes, definitely. I normally do the readings over Skype, and so it's easy. Then we can sort of do the reading. So yeah, it's all online for that. So you don't actually have to physically see me. We can see each through Skype and talk that way as well. So yeah, the reading lasts about an hour. I am sort of doing some online courses now actually as well, which is the master plan, which I mentioned at the beginning, where you can sort of train to align yourself, regardless of whether you know your blueprint. It's much better to have your blueprint, but there's certain words that are sabotaging we sabotage ourselves with, and I look at the alignment of the words as well. So regardless of the blueprint, it's always looking at what are you doing, how are you sort of standing in your own way. And so the courses will be related to specific issues, which are they're based around the blueprint. So what I've done is I've used another dimension of the human blueprint to create the courses, because the pattern, as we went back to within the sacred geometry, you can create patterns in all different realms and ways to achieve something. So it's another way of me sort of helping people to understand how to align with their inner self.
Yeah, that's great. And there's one more thing I wanted to emphasize, and that is that the way in which you work with people is very constructive, and it is about maximizing the potential and getting the most out of energy. So just wanted to clarify that there's nothing sort of negative and gloomy or anything like that you bring up in any of this.
Definitely. This is why I love what I do, because you know, even if someone has limited energy, I will find the positive side to it, because everything that I talk about within the human blueprint is always positive. Because what I'm looking at is, where are you now? How can I bring your vibration higher? And if we take your vibration higher, you are only going to have positive vibrations around. You're going to attach yourself to all the things that are in the higher vibration. So it is always positive. I don't really see anything negative, but I can see limitations, but bring you out of that, because it's an honesty thing that I look at. And if you're ready to be honest with yourself, and you're ready to have someone be honest with you, then you can flourish and you can excel with your life. So it's about me looking at what you've been given and raising your vibration and aligning you to your inner self, which is positive. Yes.
Great. Yeah. Just wanted to clarify that. It really is fascinating, and even though we don't know all the ins and outs of why and how this really works, doesn't mean it doesn't, and it can be, it is a very useful tool to just enhance your your vibration, and therefore the choices you're making, etc., and you're impacting everything else in a positive way through that. So thank you very much for sharing all this. And I wanted to ask you, just on a maybe slightly different note, if you will, your 3 top tips for people with autoimmune conditions who want to start making positive changes to their health today. So that could be anything, but what are your sort of top 3?
I'd say really invest in your self, invest in your health, basically, because what happens is we tend to spend more on our car than we do on ourselves, and we need to invest. This is a vehicle that's going to take you through life. A car, you can change it every year if you desire. You can't do that with your body. So if you invest in your health and look at it, you know, as an investment, that's number one. Number two, I would say understanding really is understanding that it's not going to be a quick fix. We've been led into an environment of take a pill and it will numb the pain, and you know, and you can get by. When you start to invest and start to understand that your life has got to come finally to a place of being in harmony by being healthy, then your understanding of that is going to give you that momentum really to keep you going, especially when, you know, you think, oh my gosh, how long is it going to last? How long have you been unwell? That's the question. The good news is that even though sometimes I don't have the energy, as you start to go on that journey of investing in your health, you start to have more energy. So you may start off with lower energy, but you start to increase it. And the more you increase it, the more energy that you have. So you're not always going to stay in the lack of energy zone. You're going to start to increase your energy. So for me, understanding that is another key issue, really. And then just to sort of realize that the more you put into yourself, the more you're going to get back. And there's lots of research out there and lots of things and lots of information that you can just spend your time on investigating yourself. So a lot of what we're doing in life is what we're focusing on is what we're going to attract. So if we're focusing on being unwell, focusing on all the things that are causing us disharmony, all the things that are around us that are creating us in a place of stress and anxiety and, you know, lack of energy, if we're focusing on that and our time on that, that is what we're going to be receiving. There's lots of information out there that you can utilize your time with. There's lots of music that you can listen to bring that mind into more of a harmonic place and a zone that's going to be a bit more receptive to understanding and listening to the things that you need to be listening to enhance your health and all that sort of stuff.
Great, that's excellent. Thank you. Very good tips. Really appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking to you about this. Thanks, Martin.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting me to the interview. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I hope everybody gets something from it.